Hey folks, Bridges here. So welcome to part two of my 3D printing tutorial. In this second part of the tutorial, it's a follow-up to part one, which I didn't realize was going to be a two-part video, to be honest. But my internet went out on me on the first one. So here we are for part two. We have designed and created a 3D, it's just like a little key tag. Um, I've seen a couple of your designs. A couple of you have shared them with me, and yours are way better than mine. Mine is so simple, but that's okay. The way we did it was we started by first sketching a rectangle and extruding it up out of the paper. Then I went ahead and rounded all the corners with the fillet, which is right up here in the features option right there. After we got the corners filleted off, I know it looks like fillet, but it's actually pronounced fillet, I believe. Once we filleted the corners or rounded the corners, I made a new sketch, which was my name. I just used the text tool, it's a sketch tool, so you have to be in a sketch to get that visible. And then I dimensioned the letters, the text box, so that it fits on my key tag. After that, the last thing I did was, I extruded the letters up out off of the face of it. And then the last thing I did was I just did a quick little sketch of this little circle hole up here and extruded that as a remove extrude so that I could have a way to put the key ring in there. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to send our print to the 3D printer. Well, there is one step in the middle that we have to do. All right, so the 3D printer, as you know, it's like a hot glue gun. Okay, it takes plastic filament. It's very thin. It's like weed eater string, and it pipes it up into something called an extruder. Okay, and the extruder gets really hot, so hot that it melts the plastic and creates like a molten material. And then at which point the extruder is on an XYZ axis, so it can go side to side, up and down, and forward and backward. Okay, so it goes in the XYZ axis, and it just lays down a layer of material in whatever shape that what your design would be, and then it cools rather quickly, and then it lays down another layer on top of that, and then it cools, and it lays down another layer on top of that, and it cools. And if you do that enough times, hundreds of times, even sometimes thousands of times, that layer, the stack of layers, gets taller and taller, and therefore creating that depth feel. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to take our one solid model, which we have right here, and we are going to export it as a STL file, okay, which is basically the way that the 3D printer needs to receive it so that it can slice it into those layers. So I'm going to right click on the way to get the STL file. It's a very transportable type of file, okay. What you want to do is go over here down to the lower left hand corner where it says part one. You want to right click on that and you want to go to export. So it exports your model. Okay, what's important here is that I know that you've already given it a name in your OnShape account, but I want you to rename it, give it the same name right here. Okay, this is what shows up on the 3D printer, so I know whose file is printing. So what I want you to do is type in your username. So it might be, okay, for me it's A Bridges. And then after that, put the name of your model. So for me, it's 3D print key tag. Now, if you don't put your username on here, okay, then I won't know who to return this to, and I guess it'll just be mine. The next thing is it's important that this stays STL. STL is what we want. The rest of the options are fine. I do like to keep it in millimeter. Okay, I realized that we didn't do our designing in millimeter. Those two aren't the same thing. We want our units, our transition units, or our basically what we are sending to the 3D printer to be in millimeters, because that is the setting that the 3D printer is set on. So just trust me on this one. Keep that millimeters. And then you can change the resolution. Okay, for this, of course, it means faster, but it's not as fine of a detail. Okay, medium is sort of the balance, and fine, it takes a lot longer to 3D print, and some of the edges and the details are nicer. Okay, usually a medium is just fine. Okay, I'm actually going to try coarse because I want it to turn out more quickly this time. Okay, the last thing is it lets you download it or store it. and we want to download our file. So again, just make sure all these fields are filled out with your name and the name of the title of your object. Okay, and the rest of them stayed the same. You may have to change millimeters, but I didn't have to. So once you're good, go ahead and hit the OK button, and it does download that to your computer. You can see, put that in my downloads folder. Okay, that is the file that you will be uploading to the cloud print. So I'm going to direct your attention over to the cloud print at this point in time, and it's probably not the best time to do this because the internet in my room went down. I'm actually on some temporary Wi-Fi right now, but the 3D printers are not hooked up to the Wi-Fi. So the problem is it says that none of my 3D printers are online. Okay, now the way that you get to this screen, and you can get to this screen, you would want to go click on the link in the Google Classroom that I posted on May 13th. So back on May 13th, I posted this right here. Would anybody like to join my 3D printer workspace? So basically just click this link, follow the steps. When it asks you to log in, you do want to log in with Google, and then it'll ask you to link up your account and a couple other steps, but it shouldn't be a problem. Once you get onto this website, it'll ask you which workspace do you want to join, and you want to join my PLTW 1250. So once you're on there, all right, here's how you send your file, your STL file to the printer. It's pretty easy over here. Start a new print, okay? And then it says to start a new print, insert an STL, a dot thing, or a MakerBot file. Okay, so we'll just click on Add Models. This is the one that we just downloaded, my username, followed by the title of it. And it does import it in, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we were looking for right there. Okay, it may turn out, okay, for example, it may look like nothing is there. If that's the case, it's probably like microscopically small, which means there was an issue with that export dimensions. The export units where we changed it to millimeters. If you miss that step, you're not going to see your 3D print here, or it's either going to turn out teeny tiny or it's going to turn out humongous, way too big for the 3D printer. But since we did choose that millimeters correctly, mine's turning out perfect, so that's exactly what we want. All right, at this point, we're ready to see. It says offline printer. Normally that would say print right there, but since my 3D printer is offline, all I can do is export it to a USB drive and then physically walk it over and plug that in. So it's the same. It's just like hitting print. It just involves an extra step for me. So I'm going to go ahead and now this is the last thing that I'm going to tell you. Support type. Okay, support type. This requires no support. Okay, but in some cases you would need some support if you were going to do, for example, something with like an overhang. Right, let me show you a quick example of that before I finish the video. All right, so this right here, this is a little rebar cap that I made. Right, if you're printing this on a flat bed, right, if I turn on my top right here, right, if it's being printed on that, well, look, how's it going to do this overhang, like the bottom of the umbrella? Okay, if it's already built up to this point right here, this overhang has to have something to rest on, and that's what the support material is called. Okay, so in this case, it would build basically an extra little support, like a scaffolding, right up next to it, so that way this overhang has something to sit on when it gets to that layer. Alternatively, what I ended up doing was over here, when I placed here, I'll just show you real quick. I'll go ahead and add another model into this print, and it's this one right here. You can see that would need some sort of an overhang. It would need some support material to support it. What I did to fix that was I just flipped it over. So I chose my model. I went over here on the settings, scale and rotate, and I actually just rotated. I rotated one of my dimensions until it was upside down. Now you can see it's sitting on its cap like this, and now it does not require any support material. I hope that made sense to you. If it doesn't, I can explain it more in person. But for this project, there's no support material needed, so I'm okay going with no support material right there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and export that and load it into my 3D printer. When that internet comes back online, you would be able to go ahead and submit that to the printer. it would not automatically start printing until after I check it out and verify it and tell it to go ahead and print. But feel free, guys, you can go ahead and get this far, and you can email me your STL files, or you can try to join my workspace like this and go ahead and send them to the printers, and I'll do my best to print them out for you guys as long as everything is the right size. Okay, guys, give me a shout if you have any questions. Thanks.